Nice.
Going on? What's
What's up,
going on? Doing
everybody?
a little bit of NBA Live today. Different cast than usual, though.
Really different
Um,
cast.
really
Not
different
not
cast.
only am I here, but Theo is not here.
He, why no Theo? That's a Theo question, man. He
That's
didn't,
the
he didn't show up,
no show.
but I think he was recording something else. Um,
Probably is all 22, and
yeah, I think he
then
was recording.
chances are after that, he went on like a nature adventure or something. Um, it would be a very Theo thing to do.
I can't blame him. But yeah, NBA Finals coming up here,
Sorry, I'm
and
eating ramen.
who are you cheering for, Blaiden?
Cheering for here's the thing. I can't really cheer for either of these teams. As a Cavs fan, it's like I feel like I'm supposed to hate both of these teams, you know? Um but
That's fair.
in particular Golden State because it's more oh my god.
There he is.
He's here. He's here.
Yeah.
Theo, I think you're on the
Sure.
wrong mic.
This is better.
Okay. Um Theo is here.
I
Uh,
was.
well, never mind. Keep talking.
I think I'm cheering for the Celtics. I want Al Horford to get a ring. That's my
that's
opinion.
Al Horford deserves one. I can get
Al
behind that.
Horford. Al Horford has one of those careers that is very good, but not Hall of Fame worthy. So I'd like for him to get a ring so he can have like that
He
under
can at
his
least have a
name. I
case,
think
He can at least have a case.
he just doesn't quite have one, even with the NBA Hall of Fame. Although I do have a question for you guys. If you think that the NBA lets in too many players in the Hall of Fame, I know it's a basketball Hall of Fame, but like, let's say you were making an NBA Hall of Fame, how many players would you let in? Like, how many players are they supposed to let in? Because I kind of don't think there's too many
Like
players.
like in any given year or like
Yeah, just like
collectively.
in total.
I I don't know. I feel like at a
I think
I don't
that I think like when it comes to the NBA Hall of Fame, I mean, I think that like people complain about like Tim Hardaway being there, and it's like I don't know, he can be in there yet. And like, I'd say yeah. I don't think it's crazy like to commemorate. I mean, there's no one in the NBA Hall of Fame who wasn't like an all-star or like a very good NBA player.
Right.
And
Like
and it's
maybe
also
there's,
like
I
go
don't
ahead,
mean to
Matt.
interrupt you. Like maybe
No,
there's
no, go
one
ahead.
or two players where I'm like, yeah, okay, but people, I made a video. It's like Jimmy Butler's a Hall of Famer, and people are like, yeah, because they let in anybody. It's like, well, this four-time All NBA player, he's been the best player on a team that made the finals. I think there's not really that many guys like that. I mean, if you wanted to limit it down to where it was just players who were like the best player on multiple finals teams and had five All NBA teams, that would be like 75 players total. It
I
wouldn't be
s-
that many guys.
I saw a video that Showtown Hoops made earlier, and he was talking about the Jimmy Butler shot, and he's like, first of all, if anyone if he makes that shot, we're talking about Jimmy Butler as if he's like a top 5 player in the NBA right now, and
Well,
I think a lot of people would talk about him as like a lock for the Hall of Fame at that point. Like
I
I
think
think that
I think people think he deserves to be in regardless. It seemed like most people agreed. I'll
okay,
say this though. The idea that like, well, if Jimmy Butler made that shot, no one would be mad at him for taking it. Well, that's true for every shot ever. And I don't think the Jimmy Butler shot was bad, but like we do have to
yeah,
like which shot isn't like that.
well yeah,
I think
but
that
it's not like it was a half court shot; it was a wide open three to win the game.
right, like he okay, he pulled up, he took the shot. I don't think his teammates were mad at him for taking that. Um, you know, and people were like, "Well, I would have driven in and drawn a foul." It's like I would have just made a two instead. It's like, well, I don't think he had that clear of a path for an inside shot anyway. And Al Horford isn't just like a scrub out there. So I wasn't mad at it, but I also think that any shot could be defended with, well, if he made it, it's not bad.
Al Horford is a guy where if like he makes the Hall of Fame, I'll say too many guys have made the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he really is. He really is about as good as a player can be without having a real argument for it.
Yes, Draymond.
But he-
Like I don't. At this point, Draymond can make it. Sure, even Clay. I don't think that that's unthinkable. Yeah, I don't know.
I think Clay is borderline. I think Draymond is an unbelievable lock. I think it's. I don't even think there's a question about him getting in.
Draymond. I would.
How many all in? Maybe he doesn't have a ton of all NBA teams, but he's a lock.
I would honestly. I would consider locking Clay too. Clay
With
with
the amount of championships they've won, they're gonna
it's-
get in. You could say that
yeah.
maybe that shouldn't have as big of an impact on your Hall of Fame legacy, but
like people talk about, is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? I think that like just based off him winning a Super Bowl MVP alone, he will get in.
That's so dumb.
I don't disagree with you, but like
and Draymond's more important. And here's the thing about the NBA versus the NFL, where there's only 5 guys out there on the floor for the NBA. So like a guy like Draymond is way more crucial than a guy like Julian Edelman to winning a finals. Like
yes.
I don't think that's like Edelman is like Robert Horry making the Hall of Fame. I don't think Horry's in there. I don't think he is.
Edelman's. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Edelman's Hall of Fame candidacy is like entirely dependent on playing for the Patriots.
Yes,
yeah.
100%. Which I guess you could maybe also say about everybody from a dynasty, where it's like, like if Draymond played, if Clay played, even if Steph, like I guess Steph would probably be a Hall of Famer either way. But like, I kind of feel like that way about both Warriors role players. But even even if you don't consider Clay like a first option, he's one of the best like role players of all time, and Draymond's one of the best role players of all time. So yeah, I think, and Edelman, and the other thing about the Hall of Fame, especially like the football Hall of Fame, is like Edelman is in the Hall of Fame. Okay. Edelman is already in there.
His gloves from that.
His gloves are in there. When you walk through the Hall of Fame, Edelman is commemorated and his Super Bowl performance is commemorated. That's all it needs to be. You don't need the entire bust player in there. The same thing with Devin Hester. Devin Hester's jersey from when he beat the all-time like return touchdown record, it's in the Hall of Fame. It's there. When you walk through the Hall of Fame, it's not like Devin Hester's not there. People always will say like, oh, you can't tell the story of the NFL without it. It's like, well, good, because he's there. He's already in there. So like, I think it's kind of the same thing with the NBA, where it's like, you don't need, like, the Hall of Fame isn't all just busts. Is there a physical basketball Hall of Fame that you can walk through? I guess I don't know.
I think so. I've never been to it.
I've never been to it either.
I
So
can look up, see where.
like you can put some guys in there who, maybe they had like one iconic moment or something like that, and you can put that in the Hall of Fame, and you don't need their entire career in there. But I do think like Draymond and Clay kind of are elevated a little bit, even above like someone like that,
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Role players don't make all-star games. Claymont and Dre are not role players. I don't know. Andrew Wiggins is just started an all-star game, and I would definitely consider him a role player.
The definition of role player is pretty loose, I'll say.
Yeah,
so if Draymond's playing a role,
rate,
it's a pretty important one.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very important role. They're not the star.
People called Tom Brady like a game manager for decades.
Right. Yeah, no.
So it's
anyway, at any rate, I'm rooting for the Celtics as well. I know that you were talking about that as well. Warriors have won a lot. I feel like basketball dialogue will be better with a Celtics ring than a Warriors ring. I think that would.
You're gonna see a lot of Jayson Tatum top 5 if they win this one. That's fine. I don't know if I agree.
If he plays well and wins the finals, you can be like, I'm not gonna be mad at that. And he's ridiculously good. I mean, he's like a Paul George in his prime, or Kawhi. I think like that's the type of player, like what he does on defense, and he's played some really good defense. I think this playoffs, like with what his defensive ceiling is, and what his offensive ceiling is, he kind of reminds me of like a Paul George or a Kawhi Leonard or something like that. So, and maybe even like those guys could, I mean, Kawhi did, but like, yeah, he's crazy good. He's crazy good. So
So
I don't think like those
are
guys.
we on the brink of Jayson Tatum having more Finals MVPs than Steph Curry?
I mean, it's not unthinkable.
It's not unthinkable.
Um,
I think they're going to give it to Curry regardless of how Curry plays. Like anything remotely close goes to Curry. Kind of like the Eastern Conference MVP. Like Wiggins probably could have won that, but Wiggins would never win that over Curry.
Imagine the chaos of in the Steph narratives if he has as many rings as LeBron. I honestly think that Steph having as many rings as LeBron probably hurts ring narratives more than it hurts. Because like obviously Steph is like isn't as good of a player as LeBron is, but he would have just as many rings. So like that would tell you more about how judging players by rings uh, is rather than how good those players are.
Right.
Not only Steph, Clay would have as many rings as
Yeah,
LeBron.
Clay and Draymond as well. So
Draymond's a lot like LeBron. Draymond, he's very versatile for a bigger guy, passes really well. He could be LeBron. He's got 4 rings as well. He's versatile as well. The difference between LeBron and Draymond isn't that's where someone is going to make that take if the Warriors win, and I just don't want to see it. I don't want to see
Theo,
it.
I want to see you make that take. That's a very.
I
I feel
just
like that's
did.
a very like Theo Ash level of bold. To
Yeah,
make a TikTok, be like, you know what? The gap between Draymond Green and LeBron James, all time, not that big.
if the Celtics win and Curry struggles, they give it to Smart 100%. And I think that's a possibility, right? I mean, Curry this season with Smart defending him shot like something like, it was a really small sample size, but we're talking like 4 for 16. The Celtics have done a nice job bottling up the Warriors, at least in the regular season, the last time they played. I think that this series could look a lot like the Suns versus Bucks last year, where maybe the Celtics win some quick ones early, and then like kind of the team with more star power like figures it out, solves the defense a little bit, and rattles off some wins later. But I think it could take a while for the Warriors to solve the Celtic defense, because I mean last time, like I said on the podcast, they only put up 88 points. So I think that it could look a little bit like the Warriors could be in trouble, and then eventually
were kind of banged up in that game though.
Their veteran presence can kind of figure out the defense, and eventually like Curry being the best player on a finals winning team just makes more sense than maybe Tatum being the best player on a finals team. And I think maybe the Warriors figure it out and win after maybe getting punched in the mouth early. But I could be wrong.
I've been thinking about this for a little bit. As I was building out my NFL top 100, I realized that there are going to be a lot of guys left off and people are going to get mad, right? It's just like the nature of building that kind of a list. But Matt, you said that you were thinking of doing an NBA top 100. And I'm realizing that with the NFL top 100, like there are going to be guys left off. But are you worried about like putting guys on that maybe don't belong? Because I feel like there maybe aren't as many high level players in the NBA as there are in just because like you think like there's 22 starters on an NFL team.
I think that people understand that like the 100th best player in the NBA is not as good as the 100th best player in the NFL. Like, yeah, I mean, the 100th best player in the NBA is like, we're getting into average starter territory, right?
Right.
And that's the tough part is,
I mean, there's only
like,
150. There's only 150 like starting players in the NBA.
Starters.
5 times.
Right, and a lot of those guys are like not even really. You're almost just ranking all of like the consistent starters, and you kind of have to project like some of the rookies are going to be hard to project, and like who's going to take a jump. That's where you look really stupid with this stuff. Because
are you going to rank yours like on like how good you think they are, or how good of a season they had last year?
I mean, no matter how you here's the problem. No matter how you rank them, like if you say like here's how good I think they were based on last season, and then like the next year all of a sudden like Cade Cunningham has like a breakout year and I didn't have Cade that high, people are going to look back and be like, oh my God, you idiot. you have no idea what shit is like. That's the problem with doing big lists
Right.
or big rankings. And like some stuff like ESPN drops their top 100 list, and some stuff looks dumb in the moment and is dumb in the moment, but some stuff it's like, dude, I'm sorry they didn't project like this one rookie like getting way better. I don't think I can blame them for that. So those lists always age poorly no matter how good you do them.
Fair enough.
Right. Yeah. No. And it's just
Like-
with 100 players, is just always going to be a mistake that you make. It just is. It's impossible to do a consensus. But yeah, no. With the NBA top 100, it's very different than an NFL top 100 because 5 starters times 30 teams is very different than 22 starters
It's
times
100.
32 teams. That's a difference
It's
of about
32. It's like I think
100
it's like
players off the top of my
704
head.
players.
A little bit under that. 600 players.
It's
So,
more 700. It's like 700.
a difference. Yeah.
Oh, different.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
my bad.
yeah, no, it'll be weird. But yeah, it would be a fun exercise. I have a lot of fun putting together the top 100 lists of whatever. So
I might do
yeah,
a
I
big
think that would
tier
be-
No,
list
I
of the
thought it
top
was cool.
100 players. I think that might be fun. Because
tier
I
lists
really
are always
my opinion is that like all of the top like superstars are way closer than people think. And that a lot of the
Yeah.
times, whichever one is like considered the best is typically the guy who just like has like decent help and can get a good finals run off. Like there's, and that this happens every like Luka doesn't have a chance to, win the finals this year just because of his help, or Giannis or whatever. And I guess those two guys are considered the best two right now. But I think like the difference between if you're building a team is like having Giannis versus having like Jokic, or like it's probably pretty close in terms of, how far they're going to get you depending on supporting cast.
right. And it's the same thing as like, yeah, no, it's impossible to like tiers are always the way to go. I think sometimes a list just makes it's more pleasing to the eye, and it just makes a little bit more sense than like looking at a tier list and seeing like the
Right.
faces of all the players, because like you may not know all the faces of all the players, and it doesn't quite register the same way. So a list is like definitely more aesthetically pleasing, but when you're talking about things, it basically should always be in tiers, because the difference between some guys
Right.
are just so like, what is the difference between I'm trying to think of two players who are exact, like Jokic and Embiid. Like they're in a tier, and then there's a big drop off. What's the difference between, especially once you get to like 90? What's the difference between two like Mikal Bridges and
then you really get into like in football, people understand that like comparing a running back to a safety is like kind of hard, right? Like, okay, fair enough. But in the NBA, there's not that same level of like, hey, these guys do two completely different things. They're hard to compare.
That gets into the conversation we were having earlier in the text chat about like the all defense teams or whatever. Like, why are we saying that like, oh, a guards all defensive team is the same as a forwards all defensive team, right? And that kind of dialogue. It's just it's really I don't know. I think basketball dialogue has it's a lot to do with just like the way that we set up like the awards, but I think it's a bit suspect sometimes the way basketball dialogue ends up going.
I would say, going back to the finals, yeah, I think I don't know how much more I have to say. I think like that's the big thing that's happening. Game 1 is, what is it, tonight? I don't even know.
It's
Tomorrow.
June 2nd.
June 2nd. Okay. Yeah. So I think that the Celtics are going to take game 1. That's my I think the Warriors are going to win the series, but I think the Celtics are going to take game 1. That's my hot take. I think that it's going to be a down night for, I think, first of all, not Looney. Poole is getting hunted. Like, I think it's just easier to hunt. Like, they both are really good defenses. I just think the answers to like who to
100.
target. Yeah, it's just much easier to like figure out the Warriors defense and like who to target than than it is the Celtics, where it's like, I don't know, who do we want Curry to go after? Who do we want Poole to go after? There's not really an answer for that for the Celtics. I think Curry is good enough that they're going to find that answer. But that's, I think, what you really got to watch out for is like just how fast. If the Warriors start and look good tonight right away, even though the Celtics just played a game 7 and it's a little bit understandable if they're tired, they've got multiple days to rest, right? They've gotten 2-3 days to rest. So if the Warriors can come out and like look good immediately, then I'm really concerned about the Celtics, because I think like initially the first punch favors them. That's where I'm at. So
I don't disagree. I think you're not sounding very loony for Looney at the moment, I'm afraid. He has been.
I meant Poole. I think I said Looney. I meant Poole.
No, but no,
different-
there's definitely like, it's very clear that the Warriors defense isn't as complete. Like you look at the Celtics like starting 5 defensively, it's ridiculous, right?
Right.
I think the big thing I'm watching for is Marcus Smart needs to study some game 1, game 2 of the 2015 finals Matthew Dellavedova tape. He has got to, because this is Curry outworks guys on offense, and he's always running around like, no, there's probably not a player better at fighting through screens and dealing with the pick and roll stuff as Smart. And that's the number one thing they like to get going with Curry. So he's going to have to be, his defensive miles, I'm sure, are going to be absolutely ridiculous. He has to be on it 24/7. But the other problem is that while he's running
won the
around
effort
trying to do
award,
all that
didn't he?
stuff,
Isn't there like an effort award that they give out or something?
right? So that's going to be such a fun matchup. But on the other end, like, leads the team in assists. He helps the most with ball movement on offense. So Smart is super valuable to the team. And if they're going to have him, trying to stick on Curry for 35 minutes a night, it's going to take a lot of energy, especially considering that he's a little banged up right now. It's going to take a lot of energy for him to do both things. So that's the other thing I'm worried about with the Celtics is the ball movement. It comes and goes with them because it's just, I don't think the ball is too often in guys who are not high level passers in that sense, and Brown and Tatum, and those guys are obviously still great offensive players, but sometimes the ball movement gets stagnant. And that's what I'm worried about for them.
Tatum is one of my favorite passers to watch when he does pass things, because Tatum, I think I'm cutting out. I am.
Good on my end, but
oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. Tatum thinks he's Mahomes. The amount of like crazy passes, like Tatum doesn't like consistently always like move the ball and drop double-digit assists, but when he does pass it, he tries, like, pay attention. He tries some of the like funniest passes, I think, where they're just like really some really complicated like
It's like he
distance
decides
stuff.
last minute when he's like, I don't really want to shoot this, and he just like launches it to the
Yeah,
corner.
no, he'll try to hit like a cover 2 hole shot as a it's
This
like
dude
you don't
thinks
need to
he's
do that,
Herbo.
you
He
know.
thinks he's Herbo.
Yeah, no, I feel like he got it in his head where he's like, I need to start passing more, and it doesn't always come totally naturally to him, but like he knows that he has to do it. So he'll kind of like force himself to pass, and it'll be like a ridiculous, like it'll be like, and he'll hit it. Like he's not exactly inaccurate with it. It's just like hilarious to watch him pass sometimes, because he'll do like the craziest shit. It's so funny.
And that's why it comes and goes. Like, Jayson Tatum models his game after Kobe Bryant, and like people who model their game after Kobe Bryant are not like looking to play make for the entire team all the time. They're looking to create and make a tough shot, for themselves. And Tatum does a great job of that. But even Kobe, like, I think I looked at it in the last 20 years, a team whose number one like option is averaging like under 4 assists or under 5 assists almost never ever happens outside of, I think, Kobe Bryant. So I think Tatum does have the passing ability. He's just got to mentally always, be thinking about to do it instead of like all of a sudden remembering like, oh shoot, I need to pass. And that's why, a guy like LeBron has been so good for so long. It's like, if you can beat guys off the dribble attack and you're always looking to pass, you keep everything as a threat
Right.
on your offense, and everyone's a threat. Whereas like you saw with like Kevin, like, and the Celtics did it to Kevin Durant. He not isn't necessarily like the greatest passer ever, even though he can create tough shots for himself. But then like, if you're not going to always be able to hit that second guy, or that open guy, double teams are a lot easier to send at you.
Yeah. I think one thing that's going to come down to is I question Jaylen Brown a little bit. I question him. I question his dribbling. That's kind of what I like, creating for himself off the dribble. His ball handling is a little suspect sometimes. And I think like some of these little flaws are really going to start to catch up with them as the series goes on, where it's like, they can't, neither Tatum nor Brown, like they're really good, but like sometimes I think like the slot, they can be a little silly sometimes, or Tatum might not always be looking to play make like someone like Steph, or Clay is really not, but Draymond is. I think like that's what it'll come down to. I think that's what it'll come down to. Jaylen
Brown's
Brown really,
consistency as a 2 is not great.
it's not great. And I think
Yeah.
it comes down to the ball handling, where he's like, sometimes he's going to have too many turnovers, and sometimes just like not great at keeping it just tight to his body, and just like breaking someone down and getting in. Like he really does try, but I don't think he's like anywhere near like a Steph or even a Tatum or something like that. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but try not to turn the ball over challenge if possible. Right, exactly. So I just think like the big stars from the Celtics just got just a few, they're just not quite natural, and like, and we're talking at the absolute highest level of basketball, but yeah, they're not
I don't
quite
I
like
don't want to
Warriors.
talk about off-season moves for them, but I've always seen DeJounte Murray as like, if they could get that guy, that would solve their problems. And it's almost to the point where I'm like, I wonder if there was a DeJounte Murray, Jaylen Brown 1-for-1 trade on the table, which I think the Spurs really like Murray, so I don't think he's really a guy that can be gotten for anything other than like a ridiculous
They already
overpay.
got their spur Derek White.
Yeah. If they could, I wonder if they could do
I gotta
that
find the
1-for-1, if
video
that
where
would
it
make them
said that-
better.
That was the most underrated move of the deadline, was the Celtics getting Derek White, was my take. I made a video on it. I've got to repost that because, hey, he got them to they probably don't get to the Eastern Conference.
They got to the finals. They got to the finals on the back of Derek White.
They did. I don't know if they get there without him. So yeah. What are we talking about? Draymond good. Speaking of that, these PJ Tucker, Grant Williams, Draymond Greens type players are becoming more valuable by the year. Yeah, I think like we're seeing kind of a shift in the NBA where these super like we just saw such a long time where, LeBron was getting to the finals no matter what. The Warriors were getting to the finals no matter what. And now I just don't think that those teams, yes, the Warriors are in the finals right now, but I just don't think we're in an era right now where it's like there's just a team or a player that's so good that it doesn't matter what you do. So these role players like Draymond or Grant Williams or Finney Smith, like become like they can actually move the needle in terms of a finals contender. Whereas like before, if you're in the East and LeBron's in his prime and you're trying to beat the Heatles or, Kim and Kyrie, it's like adding Dorian Finney-Smith is not really going to get you there. But now these days, I kind of feel like the teams aren't as top heavy, so it matters a little bit more.
I think what it is that like those defensive players are so important because people know you have to have a great offense to go win the finals. But I think sometimes people think like you just have to have a good like almost all teams that win the finals have great defenses too. Like the Bucks last year, the Suns were in there, the Warriors or the Celtics. Those are two of the best defensive teams in the league. It's like having a great defense is, makes you just as likely to go and make the finals as having a great offense. So those defensive play, you just you have to have
I think about like the NBA is a very offensive minded league. You think about like 110, 120 points.
Every league is though.
Yeah,
Every
but
league
like
is offensive.
Okay, if you score a touchdown in the NFL, that matters so much more than scoring a single basket in the NBA. So I think when you think about like being able to hold a team to like preventing them from scoring a lot of points is like a little bit more valuable than, maybe like getting a high level defensive player in the NFL. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that's just like
the reason
right now.
the reason why offense is like considered maybe more important is because a lot of the times it comes down, like, your offense is usually only as good as your best offensive player. So like, you had to have like a great offense and to win the finals, you kind of have to have a great offensive player. That's why you really mostly judge the best players based on what they're doing for you on offense, because you can have a bunch of very good offensive players, but at the end of the day, like, the ball has to be in someone's hands. Whereas with defense, I mean, having one of the best defensive players is also important, but it's a little bit more by committee, and it's a little bit more like weakest link type deal.
Yeah, you can't you can target bad defenders. You can't. It's not quite as easy to force the ball out of deny the ball from the best player on an offense. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
if someone's a bad defender, you can target them as an offense. If someone's like a bad offensive player, it's more difficult to force them to shoot. I feel like it's more difficult. It can be done. It's definitely a strategy and it's everybody's goal, but it's just harder because, sometimes the best player is the point guard and they bring the ball up the court. Like, that's just what it is, right? Like, they can't really force it.
It's just like if you're playing the Chargers, you're gonna run it Jerry Tillery, right? It's just how it is.
And I think that's just the goal of sport. Every sport, the goal is to get it somewhere, right? And stop when someone knows where they're going to go. It's easier to get there than to stop them from getting there. So it's always, sports are inherently like driven by, except maybe baseball. Baseball is like a little bit different, but most sports are like, it's tough to deny someone from getting somewhere. So offense is just always a little bit more
about
of
soccer,
the focal
man?
point.
Soccer averages like 1 point per hour.
Soccer, it's tough because it's not difficult to get to the box in soccer. I mean, a lot of times, like, they're threatening in a zone. It is tough to get a shot that is like around the goalkeeper, around everybody, but like, there are a lot of like scoring chances in soccer, right? So that's why soccer is underrated. Is, it's not just the goals that are exciting. That's my problem with soccer slander is like, there's no commercials. You're just watching the game and it's just the game. Like, there's always something happening. And a lot of the time attacks are getting like formulated and they're building. And it's like, so many people, like so many Americans are like, well, this is so boring. I'd rather watch football. But it's like, well, with football, you've got to deal with ads like every couple minutes.
You got to deal with fouls.
And fouls and stoppage and timeouts and all of this, where it's like, and that's not boring because there's like more scoring. But with soccer, it's like, there's never any breaks in the action. But
I don't
yes,
even
there's
think the problem.
Scoring.
I don't think the problem with football is that, or not I don't think that football is more exciting because there's more scoring. I think football is more exciting because I feel like something interesting happens on every play. With like, whether someone gets pancaked or someone gets mossed, or it's great coverage by the corner. I think every single play you can find something interesting that happened.
Yeah, and I think you probably could in soccer if you really knew what it was. But like, I really know football, probably, right? Like football, fair. I can look and say like, oh, it's so it's interesting that this would happen on a play. And in basketball, right? It's interesting, like, but in soccer, it just comes down to what you grew up doing. I think all sports are interesting.
Probably.
I think if flopping wasn't as present, the sport would be more praised in the Northwestern world. I don't agree because basketball is popular. There's more flopping in basketball than soccer. There is.
There's a lot
like
of
basketball. It happens
basketball.
Like multiple times per basketball game. It happens multiple times per soccer game. Soccer players will sell it to a ridiculous degree occasionally, but
I think NBA players sell it to a ridiculous degree.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if flopping was a huge problem, that like basketball would not be the second most popular sport in this country. It would be like hockey, where if you flopped, you'd get like cross-checked into the boards. I'm not even a huge soccer fan. How do you start following soccer? I don't know, because it's tough to watch like good soccer because it's all happening in Europe at weird times. So I don't know how to do it, but when it is on, soccer is interesting to watch. But this is not a soccer live stream.
It's not. basketball live stream.
One team I'm really
Shout
high
out
on next year's.
Shout out the Champions League though.
I don't like soccer. And I don't like being told that I can't not like soccer.
You can't. Your logic is wrong. You're too bored.
You don't even know my
It's the beautiful game, Matt.
First off, they don't even play high level soccer in America. It's where I
Right.
live. So I have no way to go watch high level soccer. And I think that there is a level of like scoring that is interesting. Like it's too likely that soccer can end up 0-0 or like
Yeah.
1-1. Like a tie is too likely in soccer.
You love ties. You're the guy here like, oh, I
You're
wish
the
this
tie-
game
you're
was
the
tie.
tie
but
guy.
You should love soccer.
But the difference is that the reason why an NFL tie is so funny is because it's so rare. Like if there was a tie, like, you know, I don't know how frequent ties are in soccer, to be completely honest. I don't know what percentage, but
they're
like
pretty frequent, sadly.
it's like scoring, yeah, because you're scoring by ones. No, football has 7s and 6s and 2s and 3s, so it's not happening, right? But I don't know. One team I'm really high on next year are the Raptors. I was thinking about this. I think that if there's a team that's gonna go get Rudy Gobert, it's them.
Yeah, I saw some trade machine like sending Precious to Phoenix for Ayton as well, and like stuff like that.
If they get that defender, I mean, that defense is ridiculous without a high level defensive anchor on the interior. If they get that, and then like Scotty Barnes takes another step, and they maybe don't have like that number one offensive guy quite yet, but even then, I think Trent and Van Vliet, and maybe Barnes takes another step, and their player development is so good, and they draft so well. I could totally see them if they go get like Gobert winning like 55 games or something ridiculous.
I mean,
they really are
they-
that good, and they're
they
the best
wouldn't-
coach team in the league, maybe.
They wouldn't even
I
have to
agree.
be like a finals championship team, right? Like getting Gobert would just at least make them a really competitive, really strong team, and then all they have to worry about is like, well, all we have to do is get like some consistent play out of our role players, and like we'd get like a Suns type of run. That's really all you're hoping for.
Right. No, the coaching is what it comes down to for them. And yeah, there was no big no one on their team was over 6'9", right? And they still made a pretty deep run,
Oh.
right? They're just a tiny team.
And
And they don't even really have any like
No one on the team was over 6'9".
they're small. They're small, and they don't have like a scorer that has like a deep bag that you'd trust as like a guy who can go out and get you a bucket all the time. They don't have that either, and they're small. You'd expect that to maybe be one of the worst teams in the league, and they still made the playoffs
Yeah.
because of how good Nurse is and how they play and how they develop their guys. So yeah, I agree, Matt, where they could really be a problem next year with a big addition. What was I going to say? I had a point. Oh, this is from Through the Wire to the that I stitched on Stay Hot. This is an NBA topic. He said, you know, who the question posed was, what team is the worst at developing talent?
Oh
And
my
I said the Washington Wizards, because their draft history is just so abysmal. And
they said the Lakers.
The Lakers, I mean, maybe.
I disagree.
They don't really give guys a shot, though. You know, like it's tough to say if
Right.
they do or not.
They're in like total win now mode. Before then, they had a lot of good young players, but they just like weren't developed yet. You know,
Right,
If they had all stuck in LA, I think we'd be talking a little bit different.
Okay, but yeah, no, the Wizards.
Yeah, the Wizards' player development is laughable. They really are kind of where the Hornets were 5 years ago. And I think re-signing Bradley Beal for like that big $250 million contract, that would be a disaster. Theo, you're back now. You were lagged out there for a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, you said you feel like the Wizards. Are the Cavs good at player development? Because really, it's just like
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
okay.
Obviously.
Is it good? Are they good at player development or are they good at drafting?
Well, there's no real way to tell, but Garland developed a lot. He was terrible
Right.
his first season efficiency-wise, and he
True.
got much better. Sexton
like,
has
before-
grown into a good player. Mobley's good. Jared Allen had his best season last year. There's no reason to believe
before-
that they aren't.
Before like up until like 2 years ago.
Well, up until they had LeBron on their team and they were going total win now mode. So who were they supposed? Like they just weren't like trying to develop young talent.
I guess, but it's like they had LeBron and then LeBron left and they were bad for a long time, and then they got Kyrie
weren't-
and then LeBron came back.
Well, I mean, how recently are we talking here though? Because like pre-second stint LeBron is like almost a decade ago now. It's a totally different
Okay,
front
well, are we
office
talking?
regime.
Are we talking about like in the past, over the past like decade, or over the past?
Talking like
Well,
within
no, because of
recent
what
history.
like this coaching staff, I think the Cavs have got to be pointed to as well. Yeah,
okay.
I mean that's what you got to do.
Okay.
Like, who are the best teams right now? The Cavs, I think, have got to be one of the better teams. Honestly, like Mobley was good right away. Jared Allen just had a
Yeah,
career year. He's
okay.
still pretty young. Garland
And
took
yeah.
a big step. Sexton was promising before he got hurt.
Yeah.
I think that they're one of the better, like in terms of like developing a young core. I think like a lot of teams would be happy to have the success that the Cavs have had. I think the
Yeah,
Wizards
okay.
are the worst. And like the comments of that video kind of like showed that to me. They're like, what about Beal and John Wall? It's like, well, that was 3 coaches ago. That was 10 years ago. And they were the first and third overall picks. So like, I don't understand what that has to do with like developing young talent now, because that was like early 2010s and no one on that staff is there now. And
Right.
like developing
really,
a first overall pick. Yeah.
I really agree with the take. Yeah.
Yeah. Like their draft history, and they haven't been like phenomenal that they're getting like these end of the first round caliber players. Like, no, they've picked some lottery guys and they don't. And like, maybe some of them are like, they're like some Wizards fans, they're like, oh, they're pretty good, they're going to break out, just watch it. It's like, well, they haven't yet. They might be fine and you might be promising, but like they haven't been developed to their ceiling, nowhere close.
Right.
None of them have, outside of Beal. So yeah, I think they're the worst team. Like, and the Magic have a real case as well, but like Franz Wagner just had a great rookie season. You can't say that about any Wizard in the past like decade, right? So Cole Anthony is a better player than anybody the Wizards has developed recently. Like, maybe you could say Kelly Oubre, but they traded him right away. Maybe you could say Jordan Clarkson, but he didn't really develop that much on like he was better on the Jazz, right? So the Wizards stink at it. That's my take.
I would say the Kings, but De'Aaron Fox has been solid. But De'Aaron Fox, I feel like hasn't really developed to his ceiling either.
I think the Kings actually, like, if we're looking through the history of the last decade, I think a lot of those are just bad draft picks. Like they have drafted a lot of guys who just cannot play and are just completely out of the league and never gonna like. I like.
Are they like the New York Jets of the NBA?
The Kings are like, I don't even know what they're just hell. They're like the Browns. I don't even know. Like the Browns from like, it's
the best
Browns
comp.
from like a decade ago.
Okay. I was about to say the Browns right now, they draft really well.
No, the Browns now are fine. They seem to be a pretty competent organization. But yeah, no, the Kings are just like whatever they're like the Jaguars probably. Like they're just there. And
they've had one good player. And like
they had
Maurice
some underrated
Jones.
guys in the early 2000s. Like the Jaguars had the Jimmy Smith, who might be the most underrated wide receiver ever, and they were making some playoff runs. But even the Jaguars made the AFC Championship game, and the craziest thing ever is that they should have won that. They should have been in the Super Bowl as recently as like a couple of years ago.
Blake Bortles,
2016. So like even that, the Jaguars have tasted success more.
And it's tough because I think in football it's a little bit easier to like put together kind of like a surprise run. In the NBA, you actually kind of have to be a top 4 team to make, like, you really do have to be that type of team. In the NFL, not so much.
Right.
But yeah, the Kings.
Sunday, man.
The Kings have been pretty consistently terrible, but I think the Wizards' player development is worse. The Hornets have some of the best player development for the first time in forever, and it's awesome. And
congratulations!
I'm very
that's why they have all these all-stars.
Give them time.
They
have not. They didn't have 0 all-stars.
LaMelo was an alternate, wasn't he?
Yeah, LaMelo made it. Miles Bridges was pretty, like, Miles Bridges' development has been. Don't joke about that, man.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the Kings, I mean, but even the King, like, I would say Fox is better than anybody that the Wizards have taken. I would say Halliburton is even better than anybody the Wizards have taken. Cole Anthony is better than anybody the Wizards have taken. Franz Wagner is probably better than anybody the Wizards would take it. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
Coaching has a lot more importance in the NFL than the NBA. Yeah, I don't know. NBA is just more star driven. That's just kind of what the thing is. Like one LeBron James can get you a lot farther than one Patrick Mahomes, right? Like it's just true. Like Patrick Mahomes is never going to make 8 straight finals. Tom Brady is never going to make 8 straight finals. Aaron Rodgers is only going to make one in his whole career, right? And that's
Tom
just
Brady's
what it
the
comes
closest
down to.
we've ever seen, but he also had Bill Belichick.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, no.
So it's
and
like
crazy rosters, but
yeah, like LeBron would make the finals and the coach would get fired because they were bad. You know.
Right.
But he did have Spoelstra for a while there. Spoelstra was a great coach.
Yes. Yeah.
The
That's
Heat
so-
might be
That's so fucking
and
crazy.
culture
to think
matters
about
in all
LeBron
sports.
makes the finals and the coach gets fired.
The
Yeah,
Pelicans are good. Are they? I would say, who have they developed? Like Herb Jones and Alvarado have had good rookie seasons, but they also have a lot of guys like Nikhil
This is
Alexander
the first
Walker
year
and
where that thought would
Hayes.
ever cross your mind. Like last year, you would say they got Ingram and they got Zion, but everybody else is just dog shit. Like that was their whole problem last year. This they got a little bit better this year, but yeah, no, this is the first year where you would ever say that.
Yeah. Bridges developed late though. PJ has developed poor. Like PJ Washington's a very good player, and Bridges is like a borderline all-star after his rookie contract. I wouldn't say that's too late. I think Mitch Kupchak is maybe one of the best drafting general managers in the NBA. So maybe that's more it than their development, but still.
Matt, you're being told to watch it.
My fault. My being low on the Pelicans, I believe, is a take that I'm married to next year. It's just it just seems like the stars have aligned for people to be too high on them. And I want to see what they do this offseason before I really commit to that, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm still worried about Zion's healthiness. I'm still interested to see how that defense holds up. When they have, or like how the spacing is going to be, or what that offense is going to look like. Although I think the offense itself will be pretty good. I'm just worried about the spacing. So I don't know. We have to see what moves they make, but I think there's a little bit more to solve on that team.
One player, I think we talked about this at the beginning, but going back to the Eastern Conference Finals game, I said Jimmy Butler, but you had a take where you don't think the Heat's window is completely closed, even though they're kind of an older team, and I tend to agree a little bit just because Butler is somewhat like you kind of get out of it what you put into it, right? Like your body will be able to take you farther if you put in the work and you take really good care of it. And Jimmy Butler is a guy who I think puts a lot into it. And I think like he is going to be one of those guys who's going to be athletic, maybe longer than he should be. And he's just going to be, some of it's like a cockroach is tough to kill. It's just a little annoying thing that is tough and they never die. I think Jimmy Butler's got some cockroach to him where he's going to be where he's going to just be like, just unpleasant to deal with, like not unpleasant, but he's just tough and he's salt of the earth and you're just not going to be able to kill him. I think that Jimmy Butler is like going to be around for a while and he's going to be good for a while. B, they've got a lot of pieces that you could trade for another star. C, like Lowry might be bad and he's not Jimmy Butler where he's hard to kill. All right, I don't think that's the case for Lowry, but Bam Adebayo is still really young. Gabe Vincent, like the depth and the culture and the development is all still going to be there. Butler and Bam are still going to be good for a couple more years. I agree with you, Matt, where the Heat, maybe they don't win a championship, but I think they're going to be playoff. Like
possibility of them winning a championship is not out of the picture. They're really still one move. Like they're still really close. And it's like a Donovan Mitchell trade is like very possible. It's very, very doable. And I think they could easily have the best package for him. So, I mean, that right there alone would put them, you'd say like, yep, that could totally get them to the finals. And on top of that, I do think that like we do have to wait for Butler to slow down, and I think their player development's still good. So even if they have to draft these picks, they're still going to be in good shape. So yeah, it would be wrong to say that their window is closed, but it's tough about the Lowry development.
Yeah, Butler's contract is crazy. It really is
Everyone's
expensive.
everyone's like, wow, I can't believe Jimmy Butler took that shot. Maybe he wouldn't have had to take that shot if his team would like play basketball.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, well, who do you want taking a three? Duncan
No
Robinson, he's
one.
on the bench. Kyle Lowry,
Uh,
he's
It's
not
not
that good
even
either.
Jimmy, but
Bam, no.
not even three. Who do
PJ
I
Tucker,
trust taking
no.
any shot at all in that game? Only Butler. Like,
Well, and part of it's heroes out, and Bam honestly wasn't as bad that game as I think some people want to say
no,
that he
actually,
was.
Bam wasn't bad.
Bam in game 7 was good. He wasn't
Yeah.
great, but he was good.
He's just not a number 2, I think. But if you trade the picks for Hero and you have it Butler or picks and Hero for Donovan Mitchell and you have it, Mitchell, Butler, and Bam as 1, 2, 3 or whatever. Yeah. That's good enough. And their defense, I think, would still be good. I think Mitchell is actually not that bad of a defender and he just needs to commit more.
Right. Yeah. I think
Someone's
so too. Like I
someone
think like
said
yeah, the culture and the mental aspect of being on the Jazz was really like just kind of checked out towards the end there. So yeah. Hated the
someone said that someone needs to tweet out Theo saying Jimmy Butler's a cockroach.
He is. He's a little
Tagged
roach.
him.
He's tough to kill. He's
That's
tough.
just
All right.
okay. If anyone that has ever been in like a sports locker room, like a high school sports locker room, like that's what you call you walk up to someone that like is like ugly and you're a roach. Like
No, he's not a bad. He's a roach.
it's
Salt of the earth.
I know, but like that's just what I think about like track practice. Dude will be like, why is the roach talking? Like
No, Jimmy, you're a very handsome man. I don't think that you're ugly at all. Yeah, no, he's just a tough dude. I feel like sometimes, not that he's evil, but like, you know what I mean? Like he's just one of those guys that is, I think, just like indestructible. That's kind of my Jimmy Butler take. And it's like, oh, well, he's old and he relies so much on athleticism. It's like, yeah, I think he's going to stay athletic for a bit. All right. Richard Jefferson just did the vertical at the combine and he jumped like 34 inches or something like that. It's like, if Richard can do that, yeah, if Richard can do that, Jimmy Butler is going to be athletic for a long time. It's just the way he takes care of himself, the way that he practices. I think it's all good. I think that Jimmy Butler is going to be good for another 3, 4, 5 years. I really do.
You can see it. I think that there's definitely a world where he sticks around a little bit longer. I think everybody's time comes eventually, and maybe by the end of that contract, It's a little rough, but that's kind of the nature of it now. I just think that getting that Lowry contract is killer now. And I don't know how much of it was injury, but like, he's 37 years old and his defense was just terrible. Its defense was just awful. So they can, their window is not closed if they're aggressive enough.
Yeah.
And they've already been aggressive with the contracts that they've given out. So I wouldn't see why they wouldn't also do it with the picks if it could land them Donovan Mitchell,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. I agree though, Matt. Like I think like their championship window is probably not happening, but like it's not closed. You can see the vision, I guess. But
what do we think about the
go for it, Matt.
What do you think about the Bulls next season? I think that losing Levine is very possible. And I think Lonzo his knee might really be messed up. But if neither of those things are the case, what I would do, I would be going after Jakob Poeltl. I think that is their missing realistic piece. He costs $9 million. If you go get him, their problem is that they have some of the best defensive players in the league. They really do. Like some of their perimeter defenders are nuts. But Vucevic is such a weak defender, and like what he brings on offense is not worth it. But you, at the same time, it's like Gobert is really not realistic, and Ayton isn't realistic either. So it makes it tough for them to go get that guy. But Poeltl, he's expensive still, I think. But if they were really serious about it, he's only on a $9 million contract. You can match that, and then it might be an expiring, but Vucevic's contract is also expiring, and I think that would make them one of the better defensive teams in the league, and then you'd still have Lonzo, Levine, and DeRozan out there cooking, and I could see that team making a run in the playoffs. So that's what I would be hoping for if I was the Bulls. But you got to get Lonzo healthy, you got to get Levine healthy first.
Yeah, I agree.
Pirtle is
Well-
one of the sleeper guys this offseason, but yeah.
Pirtle, even if they get Pirtle though, it's like that
They don't
still
have the
might be-
superstar player. Yeah,
that's-
it's like
that
they
still might be a first round exit. I do think Levine's a little bit underrated in the pantheon of NBA stars. I think that he could be like a D book level guy. I really do. Like Devin Booker.
We can check the
And
consensus rankings and
we can't. I would wonder where he is compared to Booker. But like, if Booker can be
Let
the
me
best
pull
guy
up
on a finals team or a best guy on a deep playoff run team, I think that Levine can be. I think that he can be the best player on a really good team. So I really think keeping him will be key. But even if they do, like, is he there right now? Like, I don't know. I just don't. It just kind of seems like last year was the Bulls' year, and they were a first round exit. So yeah, who knows? Thoughts on Hero saying it's my 4th year. I think I've earned it on being a starter.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the Heat
so.
are better with him on the floor. I agree.
Yeah.
Over Loud or like, yeah, I think so. And maybe the playmaking is a little tough, but yep, I think he should want to be a starter. He's the best player who's not starting. So I don't think it's unreasonable for him to say that.
Right. 6th man of the year. Right.
Zach Levine ranks
or-
24 on the consensus, and
About
Devin
right.
Booker ranks 12.
But-
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, but I don't think that those two have very different ceilings or very different, yeah, I don't know. I feel similar about the both of them. You need a superstar caliber player top 10 to win a championship. The Bulls do not have that. I would agree. I think like the star power is what's missing there. I think it's about I think the Celtics are going to run into that problem as well. Like Tatum is almost there, but he's not quite. That's kind of where I'm at right now. He's not quite that force. But maybe, maybe Curry's not at this point either. I guess like I feel better about Curry being there than Tatum a bit, but I think there maybe is a world where Curry is taken sort of a step back from the like guaranteed to win a championship. But because even in his prime, he benefited a lot from others or injuries on the final stage.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I think the Warriors collectively aren't, what they once were, obviously. And we talked about this on the podcast. Curry isn't, the death sentence from 3 that he once was. He's still phenomenal, but I think he's shooting like 2% lower from 3 than he was.
He's still really good. Yeah.
Clay's kind of hit or miss now.
They're going to need a down.
And they have
the
Poole,
Celtics are
but
going to need a
Poole's
down
kind of hit or
Curry
miss.
to win the series. They're going to need Curry to not be the flamethrower. Like if Curry is the best, is like still a superstar caliber player in this series and plays like it, the Warriors will pretty clearly win. But there's a chance that he doesn't, I guess. So who knows? Is Duncan Robinson the worst contract in the league? Well, he doesn't get any minutes. So yes.
Thoughts on the Hornets' chances to get? I like Duncan Robinson. I think he might get traded and start shooting better. There's some possibility of that.
Right. I think that he can be. Yeah.
Thoughts on the Hornets' chances to get Ayton, and what do you think you have to trade to get him? I think people are looking like every single trade article I read about Ayton is acting like the Suns are just trading him wherever they like. He is a free agent. He has to agree to a sign and trade, like it's a sign and trade, not a trade and sign, like the sign part, like he is a free agent first. So like, if we're talking about like, do the Hornets have a chance to get Ayton? The question should first be, does Ayton want to go to Charlotte? And if the answer is yes, then he's going to Charlotte and we'll figure out how the Suns facilitate that trade. But you saw what like Lonzo Ball got traded for last year. And granted, he's not quite probably as good as Ayton. He didn't get quite as much money as Ayton will. but he went for like 2 role players and a second, like nothing. Like and Satoransky, Garrett Temple in a second. So I see some trade offers where it's like Miles Bridges and 3 firsts and PJ Washington. It's like I mean, we're talking about a sign and trade here. I know that he's a restricted free agent, but you can't like match an offer and then trade a guy in a sign and trade. That doesn't work. So it's really Ayton's choice about where he plays. So how much Ayton wants to go to Charlotte depends on is what's going to decide whether or not he goes to Charlotte.
Yeah, and he has no connection to Charlotte except for maybe Oubre. Like
yeah, I think
Charlotte.
the odds are bad. They don't attract. He'd be the best free agent we've ever gotten.
Right. All right. I kind of have to go. I got to go pick out some glasses.
I
right
have to
now.
run as well.
Oh, you're getting glasses,
So-
Theo? I'm getting glasses.
I'm getting
But I'm
new
not-
ones. I always wear. I do need.
I'm getting new
glasses. I
ones
just
on. I'm getting
don't
new
wear
ones
them.
on Thursday. I broke my old ones, so
Yeah, I found terrible glasses at Goodwill that I've been using, and they make me look like Mike McDaniel. Batten knows what I'm talking about.
oh, the
But-
Mike McDaniel glass.
Yeah, so I got to get new ones.
Dumb question.
But I gotta. Hey, all right. So I gotta go. I will see you
All
guys
right.
later.
Appreciate
I think
y'all
that'll
coming
do it
out.
for the live then.
We'll be back. We are recording
Next Tuesday.
a
They're
podcast.
Tuesday NBA lives
Yeah.
now, by the way. It should
Tuesday
be-
NBA lives. I'll still do my Saturday live. One of you guys has to get a PS5 so you can play me in Madden one day.
It'll be a tax write-off. Can you play cross-platform?
No, you can't. It's bullshit.
Bad.
PS5 regardless.
If you guys have like Rocket League, I'd play Rocket League with you.
I'm so bad at those. I don't want to.
I'm terrible at Rocket League. The perspective messes me up. Only games I'm good at are Wii Sports Resort, Golf, and Mario Kart.
You're a pretty good Madden player. But anyway, I
I'm
gotta
okay.
go.
I'm all
I
right
gotta
in that.
go.
But yeah,
All right. We'll be back next Tuesday with another live. Appreciate y'all coming out. And until next time, Bird Boy is gone, but from Corn Boy and Lemon Boy, we'll catch you all in the flippity flop.